All right. I had no idea that was going to play. I need to check the mechanism before that. That's another dude on the network. But anywho, welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night. Let's unite at Public Radio. And that's not Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, Gary Oldman behind the screen. It's a Cthulhu bank. So just clarifying, it's on a shelf. Cthulhu with big wings. It's not Gary Oldman. So, but anyway, great to have everybody here. We got Wham here. We got Mark here. We got Dean Allen Conrad here. And all kinds of fascinating topics. Next Friday is Samuel Chong. Christina's here. And Edgar's here, and a house full of rescues. I could go through their names, but I won't. But we're all here. We're tuning in. But yeah, man, Samuel Chong is next Friday. That's with Mark too, and Jay will be here. It's been a crazy time, like some weird experiences for me. First off, I look on my Facebook and there's an inbox message from a guy, Todd Standing, asking me to go on a Bigfoot expedition. And I'm like, I'm sure it's you have to pay for it or something. I don't know. But anyway, I'm like, I have my first offense misdemeanor fines and I'm on probation for my first offense misdemeanor. So I'm like, obviously, I can't leave the state unless they're coming here, which that may be a possibility to do some weird Florida thing. But anyway, I try to avoid that kind of stuff as much as possible going into the wilderness to hunt Bigfoot. And I wouldn't be hunting him anyway because that would imply you're going to do battle with Bigfoot, and I would lose pretty fast. I'm pretty sure. But dudes, and I know of the Dick Cheney incident, so that kind of keeps me away if there's guns there. So I try to avoid that. But anyway, he still wants to talk to me, and I told him about my fines and stuff like that. And we're supposed to talk this week. I have no idea, but he's a big dude and Bigfoot. I mean, I don't know a lot about him. I know there was some weird video that was controversial that a lot of people said that was possibly fake. I don't know if it was fake. It looked interesting, but I don't know. It might have been. I don't know. I know he's been on Survivor, man. I don't know him at all. So I'm going to have a meeting and maybe I'll get him on the show at least. Somebody mentioned him. Rich Germeau mentioned him on a last show. And Rich, I've been sharing some videos at Before It's News for Thomas Reed and Rich Germeau about their interviews and stuff. So there's been some Bigfoot interviews on Before It's News with a lot of different personalities. And UFO ones and stuff like that. But anyway, let's get started. First off, about vampires. I've always found them alluring and tried to, there was a power to it that I've always felt, just the word. And during, high school when I went through chemo and stuff and testicular cancer, I got into the Anne Rice books, and I probably clung to those a little too much during all that because the cancer had spread to my stomach and lungs. It was a very death situation that obviously I overcame, and I'm fine now at 51. I'm still a mess, but I don't have cancer. So, but anyway, when I went back to school my senior year, I look like Nosferatu. I look like Powder. People call me Powder. People call me Casper. I look very pale. And of course, Powder, I found out later, the pedo stuff, so that makes that movie a lot weirder. It's harder to watch. But anyway, with the director. But anyway, the point is, people said I look like a vampire, and I had wondered on some level, reading Dracula and stuff, if energetically I grabbed onto that a little too much during that ordeal, and it's been interesting, the subject. I've interviewed Father Sebastian a long time ago. I think some weird vampire cult dude from, I don't even know where he's from, but that was a long time
Wasn't
ago.
he from France?
Something weird. There was some weird controversy with all that I haven't spoke to him in 10, 15 years or more, but he was on the show at one time. But now there's some, I don't know, some criminal stuff or something. I'd have to look it up. I don't want to say something I don't remember, but I came across some weird stuff, like cult kind of stuff, like a vampire cult. And they never asked me to be a member, and I wasn't mad about it or anything. but I interviewed him. But anyway, kids called me a vampire and stuff, and I kind of latched on to dark clothing and black, and I just said I ran with it, and it scared kids away. And I'd say weird stuff to bullies and stuff because I was always attracting some bully. and I'd have to say something. I'd say weird stuff to him to scare him away, and it usually worked most of the time. But one of my big fights was with this crazy Nazi guy that had Hitler in his locker. And one day he came up to me and he goes, and I knew this kid since kindergarten, and we were friends. And one day he started calling me fat and names and stuff. He said, "You got to meet me at Wild Turkey Circle, or I'm going to beat you up every day." It felt like I was in a weird movie. And of course, my crazy ass went to Wild Turkey Circle, which was totally against anything about me being the introvert that I am. I did not want to go to Wild Turkey Circle, but I went there and we beat the crap out of each other. And later, the police came. I didn't get arrested or nothing, but uh, he was like beating rocks on his head. They said he was on meth or something. This was ninth grade. I'm 51 now. I forget 1990 or something. But anyway, I remember Guns N' Roses playing, and but anyway, later that guy came to my work and apologized about it because he had heard that I had testicular cancer a year later, and he asked forgiveness, and he said that he knocked up some girl apparently that I had been talking to that I didn't even realize he was connected to that may have caused him to call me the fat name. But anyway, he fell through a plate glass window, was in a car wreck, went to jail, and I guess somehow equated it to attacking me. And yes, I did do some weird spell, the only spell I've ever done in my life, where you take a bottle and all these like little nails and stuff and pee in it and bury it in your yard. It's like from some Wicca Raymond Buckland book. It's like the only spell I've ever done in my life when this guy was after me. But anyway, he came to my work and asked for forgiveness, and that was fine. I did it. And I found out later that my dad, who's deceased now, was possibly took the lug nuts off his car. So that was that was that. But horrible. But I know that's a Sopranos episode. But but anyway, the vampire. Tell us, Dean, what drew you into the vampire?
Well, I've always been a creepy little kid at heart, and liked vampires and monsters. And I Saturday night I was in front of the TV. I used to watch uh, Zachary, who came from Philadelphia, and a number of other hosts who were on Saturday night on different stations at different times. And so I always liked those movies, grew up with them. And even though they scared me, there were TV shows from the 50s, like One Step Beyond. And if you remember that, it had very strange, creepy music, and the host was very strange, and he scared me. My parents watched it, and of course I would stay up and watch it. And um, so it was just, something that scared me, but I couldn't resist it.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard of Zachary. I don't know a lot about him, but I love those kind of eclectic, eccentric hosts. Those are a rare breed these days, especially to come on Florida Me TV. Like you can get that on an antenna, and then Spenguli comes on. I always have trouble saying his name. How do you say his name? I'm from Georgia, so I have a lot of trouble with pronunciation. So, but
Well, I call him Svengoolie.
how do you say? How are you saying? Is it Swin? It's like an SV
Yeah,
Spenguli.
so Sven.
Like spin, okay, like the word spin. But and then I was telling you about Nightmare Theater. But one thing, tell us some more about Zachary and some of these hosts that you've come across, because it seems like you're into that. And maybe what could you tell us about some of them?
Well,
Some of the
Zachary
hosts.
started in Philadelphia, and the TV station he worked for got this cache of horror movies from old Universal movies. So they said, "You're going to be the host." This is the story that I heard him tell. And so he dressed as an old-fashioned mortician with a long coat, and he had makeup similar to Svengoolie with the dark eye, you know, on his cheeks. And his hair was parted, and looked very strange. And there was a coffin there, and supposedly his wife was in that coffin, and he talked to her. And then there was another guy in a suit, an ape suit, and he was, and they would cavort or kind of around this little studio that looked like a dungeon. And then what he would do is he'd break into the movie, and then he'd present a little skit that looked like it would take off from that last scene where he broke in, and then it would go back to the movie or a commercial. And he was very popular. But when the station ran through these movies that they fired him because they didn't want to. Either it was too expensive to show them again, or they didn't want to. So he went to New York, and he did a similar show there in New York for one of the stations. And anyway, he lived to be in his 90s, and I've seen some interviews with him and in his 90s, and he was very sharp, and as recalling these old episodes in the old movies. It was very interesting, and you can find him on YouTube if you want to, if you'd like to go back and see him. And and then there was a guy named Dr. Shock, and then he had his little girl on, and he dressed similarly to Zachary. And then there were a number of them that I watched and just enjoyed.
What year was Zachary when he was running? What year was that?
Oh, he was in the 50s and 60s.
Wow. And talking to his dead wife, was someone in the coffin, or he just pretended?
No, it was just an empty box. It wasn't even a coffin. It was just a box. And he would call her my dear. Yes, my dear. And he'd answer her.
And that was just like on regular TV. Like that's the stuff that trips me out. Like that's just
yeah, you wouldn't hear a voice. He would hear it in his head and then answer her appropriately. And it was a lot of fun. A lot of the humor, I think, was wasted on children, as in a lot of kids shows, I think, and movies. A lot of I think that the humor is aimed at the parents who are there watching it with them.
And one step beyond. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, with those kind of schlocky skits on these kind of the monster feature of the week, and okay, maybe some of the jokes weren't really understood by the kids watching the show, but how does those kinds of experiences go into you becoming a serious horror writer? How do you make that connection with those just childhood memories?
Well, I mean, to show you what kind of a little creepy kid I was, when I was about the age of 11, I went to my parents during the summer, and I said, you know what? I said, I'd like to put a mad scientist laboratory in our basement. And they kind of looked at me, and they knew what I like to watch on TV. So they said, okay, but you have to clean the basement first. So there was a kind of a caveat there. So I cleaned the basement, and I got some of my friends, and we built this, different sections of my basement to accommodate a monster and a dummy on a table that was supposed to be like the Frankenstein monster. And I got an old pickle jar and a rubber hose and made a bottle of blood. And so then we charged friends, neighbors, relatives an entrance fee to go through the basement. So at least it was clean, if nothing else. I don't think I scared anybody, but I hope they were entertained. So actually, the idea for this trilogy is kind of an interesting story. Um, I think it was probably the year after the pandemic, because we went to a professional baseball game. My son-in-law invited me, and we were going to go. He would go, I would go, and my grandson, oldest grandson, who was um, probably four and a half at that time. And so this was his team and his park, and he knew his way around it. So we were driving, and he was watching for parking, and I was looking out the other side, and I saw this man, and he was in the fentanyl slump, or dipping as they call it, and he was standing up. He was passed out. He was bent over at the waist, and his fingers were just about touching the sidewalk, and he just kind of defied gravity the way he was standing, and he also had his. It was summertime. He had a t-shirt and shorts, and he had the shorts and his underwear pulled down around his ankles. And I said something, because my grandson was in the car. I said something to the effect like, "Holy smoke, will you look at that?" And my son-in-law, who's a police officer, looked in the side view mirror, and he said, "Oh yeah," he said, "that's a heroin addict." He said he got some heroin with fentanyl in it, and he said that's what they do. And I said, "But his pants are pulled down." And he said, "Well, the fentanyl gives them the urge to go, and sometimes they pull their pants down." And he said, "Sometimes they go and sometimes they don't." And I thought, wow. So we found parking, and we had lunch, and then it was a kind of a rare Saturday afternoon baseball game, and we were on our way back, or on our way to the stadium, walking, and there was another guy, and he was passed out on the sidewalk, and people had to go around him, and they had to get like in two lanes to go around this guy. And that really bothered me, because I thought, this is somebody's son, this is somebody's brother, somebody's husband, um, and I thought he's at the complete mercy of anyone who wanted to hurt him. And so after I got home, I couldn't get the thought of these two guys out of my mind, and I started to think, well, who would want to hurt him, And I thought, well, maybe some kids would want to rough him up, and I thought, well, vampires, they'd be the perfect prey for a vampire, completely helpless. The vampire could come along at night, pick them up, whisk them away, to their demise. And so that's where the idea of the trilogy came. And when I got through getting close to the end, I did a lot of research, and especially on drug use. And so as I got close to the end of the first book, I thought, I have a lot of material here. I could probably do a second book. And I did the second book, and I thought, I got halfway through that, and I thought, well, why stop at two? I'll make a trilogy. It seemed like natural. So that's what I did. But I think what makes these books different from most is that, well, they're modern. They're set in modern times, and they are. Most of the characters are homeless, and they're drug users. So they live in tents and boxes on the street. They use drugs. They pass out. They have some overdose. So they're very easy prey to the vampires who take them. Now the vampires in the first book are kind of aristocratic, something you would think of old time. They're hundreds of years old, and they don't like tainted blood. So they want blood that's more or less pure. So they take the people, they throw them in cages in a restaurant basement, the after dark restaurant, and they wait, let them go through the horrors of withdrawal. And when their blood is clean and tastes good enough that to their liking, they drain them. So that was kind of the whole, idea.
Well,
Is there a hero? Is there someone that can battle these vampires, like an antagonist?
Well, yes,
Yeah.
there are. So the book follows a college student named Bo Bentwood, and he becomes involved with these vampires, and in I I don't want to give off too many secrets, but he's one of the characters that makes it through all three books. Not all of them do, because they're killed in one way or another, and there are so some of these homeless people manage to escape from the vampires, and they meet up and they say, look at our lives, we have nothing to what do we have to live for? We're addicts, we live in the streets, our friends disappear weekly, let's band together and fight the vampires. So that's what they do without any knowledge. There's no Van Helsing, there's no master of the occult who has a plan. They just kind of wing it to although they do use an old copy of Famous Monsters of Filmland. That's the magazine, a fan magazine from years ago, which I have a number of. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
But that's actually an autobiographical detail you have in your book.
I do.
Dark.
So I actually have that, the issue that they use to fight vampires, I actually have. So there's an article in there that describes what the powers and weaknesses of vampires are. So I use that to kind of frame, their ideas, and they just accepted this fan magazine as legitimate, and they're going to use it to fight vampires. And then they also run in during the course of the book with a professional vampire hit squad who help them, these drug addicts, greatly. And they are very kind of nasty. It's almost like a military, quasi-military, paramilitary group who fight vampires.
Nice. Well, I definitely want to check out the books. I haven't yet, but when I can, I'm going to. What are the titles of the books, and a website are the best place to go, so we can do that several times so our listening audience can check them out?
Sure. The first one is called After Dark. And here it is. And the second one is Before Dawn.
Awesome.
And the third one is,
what's the art on the front? Is that real buildings, or is it, what's the art? I see like buildings, like structural buildings in the covers, the art.
actually my son made them. My son and his wife made the covers.
Awesome.
And he used well, the first one he just made, because my son's an architect, so he's very good at art, and he composed those covers. And then the third one is The Reluctant Vampire, and so that kind of gives you kind of a hint about what happens to somebody who becomes a vampire reluctantly, doesn't want to be, but is kind of forced into it. So the other thing about the books is that when I got the idea and wanted to write them, I wanted to do something more than just a vampire novel, vampire series. I wanted to do a kind of a moral lesson too, because the people, some of the characters don't survive, but the ones who do are kind of redeemed. And they all have, and the whole idea of addiction is very present in the book, in the series. The people on the street, and then the vampires themselves are addicted to blood, and almost everybody has some kind of a problem. There's very few people who are actually clean in the books.
Yeah, I think that's a yeah, you bring a unique take on the vampire stories by setting it in, you know, modern times. You use a lot of symbolism, like you were saying with the addiction. But you just mentioned some of the character. I think one of the nice things about your book is you have really good characters. We can get into Mad Maggie, some of the other homeless characters that bring some comedy. Uh, a, a sadness by looking at their condition. Um, but you make them fully developed characters. You were just talking about some of them are looking for redemption. And even at the beginning of the show, Jeffrey gave the example of his the fight he had with his friend, and his friend, came uh, came back and was looking for forgiveness. It's an aspect of redemption. It just seems like there is a natural human need for redemption after you screw up. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the themes of redemption in After Dark?
Okay, sure. So most of the characters have street names, monikers that they go by because they can't use their real name because there's warrants out, uh, for them. Overboard George, who's kind of one of the main characters, is a someone who went AWOL from the Navy. And he's been on the streets for years. And if he used his real name, he always has the fear that he's someone's going to recognize him, or the police, if they get his name, the Navy still has something out to watch for this guy. Mad Maggie, it has psychological problems. She's not an addict, and she killed her abusive stepfather when she was a teenager. So she has, some baggage. And so once they start to fight vampires, they decide, hey, we can't get high. We can't do drugs and fight vampires because we just will be so much more. They are so strong. We have to stay clean, and they do. And the ones who survive stay clean, and they are able to fight the disease or fight the addiction, and actually, I shouldn't say this, but Overboard George and Maggie become they marry, and and it's just like a little civil ceremony that they do on the shore of the ocean with all their friends. And so I think that's a kind of a touching scene and that's in book 2. And so the first book is set in an unnamed large city on the East Coast. It's large enough to have a professional baseball team. The second book is on the West Coast, unnamed, in Southern California. And then the third book is in a small Midwestern town, which is Bo Bentwood's hometown, because he wants to return home to, after he escapes from the vampires, he wants to return home because for all his parents know, he's dead because he just disappears from college and no one sees him again. So he wants to return home and check on his parents.
Well, it definitely sounds like a great read. I'm going to check it out.
It is.
There's some other ones that I'm trying to get the gift certificate for the first one of yours, and then there's some by the Fright Night guy, Tom Holland. I have two of those about Fright Night. They're like novelizations, but a new one just came out too called Origins. I have to grab that at some point. I'm slow going with money, but I'm working my way to the right directions. but I'll definitely check it out. It sounds great. And some influences of vampires. The Nosferatu film is definitely one of my favorite things ever when it comes to vampires. And I love the Bela Lugosi thing. And when you can, I want you to show that again when you feel like it, or we feel like moved to share the autographed Bela Lugosi. And then I love that version, of course. And then that Klaus Kinski Nosferatu, the color one with Werner Herzog, that is just something. That is just a special weird treat for sure. That one's just very creepy. I love it.
That was a great movie. I really liked Klaus Kinski. He was a great actor.
I have a novel. Go ahead.
Here's Bela. You probably can't see his signature at the bottom, but and I got this when I was a kid because I was all into horror movies, and we used to. My parents, we would go to eat at a place called the Deer Lake Inn in Deer Lake, and this property had a summer stock theater called the Deer Lake Theater, and it attracted a lot of famous stars before they on their way up to stardom. And I imagine Bela between movies went there and performed possibly Dracula because he did that on stage. And so anyway, when we would go into when I was a kid, the theater was no longer there. It didn't exist anymore. But they had a restaurant and a motel, and of course the the lake itself, where you could boat and fish and enjoy water sports. But when we would go to the restaurant, I would always go around and look at all the photographs on the wall, and I spotted Bela. Well, I was just enthralled that his signed photograph would be up on this wall where I was going to eat. It didn't take much to excite me when I was a kid. So anyway, my uncle found out about this, and he was friends with the restaurant owner, and so the restaurant owner gave him this photograph. He said he had more of them. So the next time I saw my uncle, he surprised me with this photograph. So that's been a prized possession ever since. And about a year ago, I was looking at this photograph, and I thought, I wonder if this signature is genuine. And so what I Googled Bela Lugosi's signature, because I figured it was like my uncle to take the picture and write "Best wishes, Bela Lugosi," and say, "Look at this, it's autographed." So anyway, so I looked it up, and there were photographs online of Bela's signature, and it's very similar to this. So I would believe it's authentic. So that makes me like the photo much more.
Definitely.
Yep.
And what are some vampire movies or books that have influenced you, or some of your favorites?
Well, I think Bram Stoker's Dracula is certainly one. There is a book called Stoker's Manuscript, which is a real excellent book. And I have it here. The only thing is,
I'm looking it up. It sounds interesting.
it's by a guy named Royce Prouty, and it's a very good book. From what I read about him, he only wrote a couple of books, 2 or 3 books, but that was very excellent book. Very the descriptions in it of the crypts and things are very very good, and things like I liked Salem's Lot.
Yep.
Other. I'm not a great Stephen King fan, but I, uh, I did like that one. And one thing about my vampire world is a little bit different from other vampire worlds that you might see in movies. A lot of times you see a vampire, a vampire bites somebody, they fall on the floor, and 10 seconds later they pop up and they're a full-fledged vampire with all the strengths and knowledge of a vampire. In my world, when someone's bitten, the vampire disease that the vampires have infects the person who's bitten and kills them, and then it takes over their body and then brings them back. So it actually builds a cocoon around the body, and it takes about 3 or 4 days for this vampire disease to spread through the body and then reanimate it. And so when the vampire comes out, it doesn't have, it has the strength and the speed, but it doesn't have the knowledge. It doesn't. So normally a seasoned vampire would take a new vampire under his or her wing and kind of teach them the ways, where to hunt, how not to get noticed. And so in the third movie, or in the third book, The Reluctant Vampire, that vampire does not have the benefit of this tutelage that most vampires have, and he has to really kind of wing it on his own.
Yeah, Dean, that's an interesting point to talk about. Okay, you get vampires set around a major league baseball park. You're addressing the addiction, homeless issue, so there's some social commentary in After Dark. And you just mentioned Salem's Lot. Yeah, okay, that would be probably considered a modern day vampire setting as well. But you know, as you go back in time, maybe a lot of Anne Rice might be a little bit more closer to the Bram Stoker Dracula themes. But can you tell us a little bit about what the tropes from the 1897 Dracula that you kept in After Dark to just kind of make that connection that I think a lot of people still like the as Jeffrey holds one of the dogs, it's almost time to make a comment like listen to them, children of the night.
The brat dog, that's for sure.
Yeah, but you do with the modern settings and themes, you still still kind of work in those themes that the gothic themes that everyone loves, from Bram Stoker and Poe and authors like that.
Sure. Well, originally, I mean, vampires were thought to be really kind of evil. Uh, they didn't have a lot of. It wasn't really until let me see here. There was. It wasn't until there was a short story written by a guy named John William Polidori in 1819, and it was called The Vampire. And in that, he gave the vampire a backstory where he was noble and he was handsome and yeah, very suave. And that's kind of where the tradition, and it said that Stoker used some of that info on molding his Count Dracula, although he also used Vlad the Impaler, the Romanian nobleman who lived in the 1400s. But when so they were up until that time they were thought to be kind of mindless zombies, and it was really actually the idea that that sunlight was fatal to vampires didn't come wasn't really developed until Nosferatu, the 1921 silent movie. Up until that time, it was thought vampires could move around during the day. And Bram Stoker himself introduced a lot of lure that has kind of been accepted and now, agreed that this is exactly what a vampire is. And he introduced the idea that vampires could transform into bats, wolves, and other animals, and they had powers of strength, agility, and hypnosis. Also, that the vampires cast no reflections and had to rest during the day in their native soil. So that was all kind of introduced by Stoker and then kind of adopted by everybody who came after him. And some of those things I have too. The sunlight is fatal. During the metamorphosis of these vampires, if it's interrupted in some way, if these cocoons are disturbed, the vampires will come out half formed and half animal, half vampire. So in that first book, the vampires in After Dark have a number of these creatures who do their hunting for them, and they leave them out at night, and they run into a park that's nearby, and they grab the unconscious drug addicts and bring them back to the basement. They're put in a cage, and again, they're let go. They let them go through the horrors of withdrawal, and once their blood is clear, they're pulled out and they're drained.
I don't know if I'm phrasing this correctly, but you do have, you just mentioned, Bram was, writing about, Dracula has to sleep in his native soil. You get inside the after hours bar, cemetery statues from cemetery that was removed to build the baseball park. So, and you get a couple of little statuaries as some of the decor inside the restaurant. So that's a little subtle example of keeping some of the traditional themes alive while updating your story for a modern reader, which I think you make it a very good impact on the reader. This is very scary book, a lot of suspense in it. I think it's very well done.
Well, thank you. Yeah, as part of it kind of goes into the description that the city wanted to build a new ballpark, and so once they got the financial part ready, they pushed out all the homeless people and bought blocks of tenements and tore them down, and even moved part of a cemetery. So after dark was one a historic building, so it kind of escaped the wrecking ball, and it remained a restaurant, and then there were offices above, and so they took some of the statuary from the cemetery and moved it into the different places in this
Yep.
restaurant. And the book kind of raises the question: if is it real or not real? Because the waiters, because now the bar has a reputation of being haunted. So it says, the waitresses and waiters will tell stories about their own encounters with ghosts, and so, but you don't really know if that's true or if it's just something that they're saying to get a bigger tip, and kind of frighten their customers.
Well, yeah, you're also, uh, yeah, what, 40 some years later, you're also kind of, with the modern urban expansion. Yeah, we go back to the line from Poltergeist. You only move the headstones. It's kind of like this, same, a more modern, uh, classic line that we all grew up watching, and I think that's just one of the appeals of your book is how many of these just little descriptions throughout the book that, oh, hey, kind of go back to that movie, or um, the movie from my childhood, or some of the traditional movies. So you do work in all kinds of different themes um,
Yeah,
throughout
yeah.
After Dark.
There are any number of what I guess you would call Easter eggs in the book, and
Hmm.
most people won't recognize them because they're just in my head, something that I remember, and
Hmm.
so they amused me when I wrote the book.
Yeah, but that's one of the nice things. We were talking a little bit about that prior to the show starting. I might as well just let the audience know is just. Uh, I think that's one of the nice things about working with Jeffrey and Wham, and helping out with other shows is learning how many memories from childhood, just kind of go into creating a great horror book, or poetry, or something like, what's that? What's that based on? Oh, okay. Well, here you are, just telling us all all kinds of different experiences go into creating a character or a book. I think it's just one of the neat things about doing podcasts is learning about the creative process.
Yes, and I've certainly enjoyed watching some of the I've seen. I don't know how many now that you've been on, Mark. Um,
I get pimped out a lot.
well, you do an excellent job. Uh,
Thank you.
you're really a storehouse of information. And but one of the things that well, there's a scene in the first novel where the drug addicts attack After Dark's basement, and they're going to go in after in the daytime. And there's a trapdoor in a lot next to the, and they go down.
That scene.
And there's an oblong swatch of sunlight on the basement floor, and they go in and they say, "This is our base. Don't get too far from here." And so as the fight goes on and they search for the vampires, the day wears on, and that area of sunlight gets smaller and smaller, and then it gets cloudy, and then it disappears altogether. Well, now they're in a real pickle, because the vampires, at first the vampires can't reach them when they're safe in this in this area of sunlight. Well, and when it gets cloudy, they're in trouble.
Yeah. William, how does all this paranormal fit into your paranormal research? Is it consistent? Pretty,
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't study vampires as a paranormal phenomenon. I mean, I think that, I've studied stories about vampires. Like when I did my dissertation, I committed an entire chapter to horror tropes that show themselves in various ways in UFO abduction narratives. And I'm not talking about the experiences of people, but the stories that are made of their experiences. Some of the larger mainstream sort of stories that are told about them. And there are similarities, for example, between the way in which some aliens are depicted and the way in which vampires were depicted in the 19th century in particular. Not so much, the more modern versions of vampires, especially starting with, I think of the reframing of the vampire in Dark Shadows, Barnabas, the compassionate vampire who was a vampire and didn't want to be. I'm talking more about the monster, Bram Stoker's monster, and some of the earlier renditions of vampire that you then see kind of classically in Nosferatu and is resurrected in Salem's Lot. There are similar among those tropes, and please understand, I'm not willing to go into great detail about this because it took me a dissertation, to write all of this up. But some of the stereotypes are racial. If you go back to Bram Stoker's Dracula, for example, a lot of the ways in which Dracula is portrayed, the language that's used, is exactly to the word, exactly the same kind of language that was used to stereotype Asians in literature and newspapers during the time. And so when you read a lot of the tropes surrounding UFO aliens, the slanted eyes, the unnaturally pale skin, especially if you go back into like how those early tropes that you find some of those early descriptions of aliens in pulp fiction, comic books of the 20s and 30s, for example. There seems to be a continuity there, probably not least because a lot of people who read vampire books also read pulp fiction. You know what I mean? It's like there's an intense overlap between people who read about aliens and stuff and people who read about, horror monsters. And you see that in popular film all the time, or popular, entertainment. So, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I did. But the other thing is some of the interests that vampires had. The interest in the extraction of fluids. The need to kind of the fact that aliens would keep, at least according to the narrative, the popular narrative, they keep coming back to the same people over and over again to extract stuff from them. The feeling that they had been marked in some way, where in vampire lore, there's often, at least in Bram Stoker, there's often this idea that you've been marked. You can either see, wounds on the flesh or bites in the neck or, something to indicate that you've had contact with something that is unearthly. So, I mean, those are the kinds of things that I looked at. I wasn't trying to draw I was only trying to draw narrative continuity, not try to say that aliens were vampires or that or that aliens or that vampires were aliens, back then, but we thought of them as something else. I think that in the human imagination, they sort of, especially when we're talking about them, they lie in the same kind of liminal space as sort of the unknown. And a lot of unknown things, regardless of their actual ontological status, like whether they're real or not, if they lie in a liminal space, then how we talk about them tends to overlap. And that's,
Wham, you always bring interesting insights into your discussions. And okay, Jeffrey, you have a question?
I keep thinking of different movies during all of this. Vampire movies are like going through my head. Near Dark. What was the other? Now I forgot the other one, but Near Dark kept going off in my head. Just gems that are unique in the vampire energy that are out there. Like there's one I just saw. I haven't seen it yet, but Nausea. It's called NADJA, I think. But somehow David Lynch is a producer on it or something. I haven't seen it yet. There's a lot of weird vampire shit out there that, and as we talk about it, it goes off in my mind. So, and I start thinking about it.
You were also talking about the Klaus Kinski.
Yes, love that one.
Nosferatu.
Love that one.
Yeah, Dean, you also get into a little bit of the reincarnation theme. So you are bringing in some very old spiritual concepts as well. How's that fit in with the vampiric characters?
Well, some of these vampires are very old. They're hundreds of years old, and they the vampiress was she and her brother Gerard were of minor nobility, and she danced with Napoleon, and they talk about the Middle Ages when armies weren't fighting. They were digging through cemeteries looking for vampires, and that's one thing that people used to do. They would, if they suspected someone was a vampire, they would dig up the body. And of course, back then they weren't bombed, so they tended to get bloated and with gases, and the blood would be forced into their lungs and might come out in their mouth. So if they saw a bloated body, they would assume this thing is alive and it's eating because it's getting bigger, and and there's blood on its lips. So they would have a whole host of things that they would do before they decapitate them, and before they burn them, before they return them to the earth. There was a whole litany of things that the superstitious people did, and a lot of things they probably mistakenly thought that something supernatural was at work when it was just something natural. Yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
No.
Hey, Mark, weren't we
Yes.
talking about that Summer monologue guy or whatever about the vampire books? What's his name? Summer with an M. It's the guy that writes strange vampire books. Like, I have one of his books, but I thought his name was Summer. I'd have to look on Google when I'm more capable, but there was somebody I was discussing his books with, but they're older books about vampires, like real books about vampires. And I swear his name's Summer something like that. You can look it up. You're gonna make me look at it. Do it.
There,
I'll find it.
I think he did a show with Mark Dawidziak, who covered vampires.
Yeah, it's possible. And
That's not. It's not close to the name you're referencing, but I know. I think Mark did an extensive vampire show with you and Wham one time.
it's Montag. I'll spell it Montague Summers. Is anyone familiar with him? If not, check it out. There's some interesting stuff.
Now,
I am not, but I will write that down.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's, let me spell it again. It's kind of a weird. I'm not sure where he was born, but Montague Summers. And if you put up his name in Google, a lot of weird. I have one of these books in hardcovers. I think he has a lot of different ones, but a lot of weird stuff comes up. It's a journey for sure. Check it out when you can. But yeah, I need to dig up that book. I have it somewhere. I bought it in Little 5 Points, Atlanta, at a bookstore. I forget which one, but it was in Little 5 Points.
yeah. Well, you and Wham have covered a lot of vampire stories.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
authors.
we've had Dacre Stoker on. He
Yeah.
invited me to Transylvania. I didn't go because I knew what would happen there. They would get me, so I didn't go for financial reasons. Maybe one day I'll go, but I mean, I would like to go to Transylvania one day, but after this Iran thing blows over, or all of this blows over.
Yeah,
I've never been on a plane, and right now I'm definitely not going on one.
yeah, that would, you can't, really can't get any closer to vampire lore than having the grandson of Bram as a guest.
Yeah, another eclectic, strange one. Don Webb, Vampire Magic from Don Webb is associated with the Temple of Set, which is a whole weird thing in itself. So that was an interesting show. But we're glad to have you here, Dean, to add to our vampirism.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here.
So where do you stand on this, on the evolutionary vampire? Are you seeking a vampire for eternal life or human?
Well, I don't think there are any real vampires. I think that anyone who thinks, there are people who claim they are vampires, who think they are vampires, and I think that is more of a either a medical condition where they crave blood, or they it's maybe a mental problem that they take on. There was a movie with Nicolas Cage, and I can't remember the name where he.
Is that the Once Bitten? Once Bitten or something?
There's. It could be it, where he thought he was a vampire.
So many good things. Once Bitten. God, wasn't there a Jim Carrey one that was? I'd have to look them up and maybe mixing up names, but wasn't there like an old weird Jim Carrey one? I could be wrong, but I know the Nicolas Cage one. I haven't seen that in a while. And man, we got dogs here acting this out of control. This one dog. but anyway, the energy's in the air. As far as but so many strange like Catherine Bigelow, isn't that who did Near Dark? That was a female director, and that movie, I don't know how well it did, but that's a gem. Near Dark. God, I saw that when I was a kid at a drive-in. I believe I saw it with my dad. That was a crazy movie that I could watch it at any time and it's held up pretty good with Lance Henriksen and all that. And that was from a female director that at that time for someone to put out something like that. I like John Carpenter's The Vampires. I have the book by John Stakely. But I enjoyed the movie. I mean, it's not the greatest in the world, but it's likable. I like James Woods, even though he's a prick most of the time and everything. I guess that's his personality. But yeah, Vampires is a good watch.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, the comedy in it, the dark humor, and John Carpenter, of course. He's supposed to be putting out some new stuff at some point. I forget exactly what, but he's working on some new stuff. Hopefully, before he departs the building. You know, there's some game Toxic Commando that came out that he somehow has a subtitle on John Carpenter's Toxic Commando. I haven't really looked at it too. It's some zombie apocalypse. I'll check it out. Zombie apocalypse game. I'll check it out at some point. But go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, you know, Jeffrey, towards the beginning of tonight's show, you referenced personal experience where you said it kind of got a little pulled in a little too much into the vampire lore while you were going through your medical issue, and I think Dean has a character. Well, it's you can tell by the title, "The Reluctant Vampire," Part 3. Okay, maybe people got pulled in a little too much into the situation. You see that, and this is really nasty. How do you get out of this? May need to look at self-sabotaging behavior to go from these dark promises to actually go back to being a human. So you kind of touch on some of those themes, and just came up in personal autobiographical stuff said by Jeffrey. Do you find that writing horror that you have to address topics like create characters that realize what did I get myself into?
Sure, I think you have to address that. I think you have to put your characters in, even if you set the story 100 years ago. I think you have to put them in situations that people can relate to now. I did a short story. I have a book of horror short stories, which I will.
Oh, and we need to have you back to cover that one, the Mammoth book.
Anyway, there's a story in that where there's a girl and she suspects a vampire, and she goes into an abandoned house to look for him, and you think, well, I won't tell you what happens, but anyway, but I do think you have to even whenever you set that story, you have to have something that your reader will find relevant.
And you're in Pennsylvania, right? That book that you just held up, is that fiction or real stories? What exactly is it? Pennsylvania. I've had Stan Gordon on before, and I know there's a wealth of crazy paranormal stuff in Pennsylvania. But is it like horror stories, like fiction?
Well, these are all fiction, and they're in the city where I live, and it's called Pottsville. But I named it Mammoth after a genuine mammoth. There's a 40-foot vein of anthracite that runs through the area, and I think the coal companies that are still remaining are still digging into that mammoth vein, and it helped the Industrial Revolution, kind of the fuel for the Industrial Revolution with that coal, and they used to mine it and float it down the Schuylkill River to Philadelphia, and then it was shipped to other ports and or used in Philadelphia mills. But anyway, the idea that people have they should your reader should be able to associate with that person and that whatever fears they have, whatever feelings they have, no matter when the story takes place.
And how do you feel about the paranormal? Have you had any personal experiences, or do you not jive that way?
I don't really. I had an incident when I was growing up. I was probably, I don't know, 12 or 13, and my friends and I were walking along this railroad bed, and the railroad was cut out of there was a cliff there, and we decided, for whatever crazy reason, to climb this rock face. And when everybody got up except I took a different route, and I kind of got stuck, and I reached up to get a handhold, and when I did, I grabbed a rock, and the rock was loose, and it came off of my hand, and I just kind of went back, and I was almost in free fall, and something pushed me back into the face of the rock, and I got another handhold, and then I was able to get down and go up the way the other kids had gone, and got off the rock. But that was,
yeah, that's a big one. That's a paranormal event. My thing was I went through testicular cancer at 17, and it sucked. And then a few years later, my dad died, and I started to have a lot of weird, like, ghost experiences, some UFO stuff. I saw beings of light down here in Florida at Silver Lake. I was completely sober, and the Watchword Bible was on, playing some meditation thing. For whatever reason, I was playing it, and something said, "Go outside and turn towards the house." I looked towards the house and saw two people made of light leave my house, like Ron Howard's Cocoon. But you couldn't see their facial features or anything like that. But my point is, that's what it reminded me of when you said that. There's a book called The Afterlife of Billy Fingers by a lady, Annie Kagan, that I recommend. She's a singer. Her brother dies, and it's a true, like, an afterlife book, but he appears to her as a being of light. So something about the trauma of losing a meatball and chemo and my dad opened my senses, and at times I have seen weird stuff, and the being of light thing is possibly us or angels or whatever, but there's something to it based on what I've seen, that's for sure. And that's pretty much why we do the show. But that's interesting, though. That's an interesting story. That sounds like something intervened to help, you not get hurt. So angelic, maybe, or deceased loved one. There's so many ways to go with it. That's for sure. There's crazy UFO Bigfoot cases in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Like
It,
some crazy
it,
ones.
and speaking of Stan Gordon and other Pennsylvania settings for uh, paranormal experiences, Dean, you work with Max Furyk as well. He's been a guest with Jeffrey and Wham, what, 2 or 3 times, at least twice.
A lot. 3 or
Yeah.
4. A lot.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, yeah, it's been a few times. So, okay. So you guys get together in your writing group. What what's going on with the future of horror writing in Pennsylvania?
Well, I'm sure I'm happy to report it's alive and well. I met Max at there's a paranormal book coffee shop up in Wilkes-Barre, or outside Wilkes-Barre, and they had a book. I went there, and quite by accident, and introduced myself, and I said, "Do you ever do book signings or readings? I'd be interested if you are." And so uh, they invited me up. I think it was in the Halloween season, and Max was there, and there was another writer, and so that's how I met Max. So we traded books, and we've become good friends ever since.
Yeah, he's from the shows he's done on the Church of Mabus. He's covering a lot of the Pennsylvania locales. The Smurl haunting and the not too distant Amityville horror setting. The coal mine disasters. So he's covering. That would tie in with the Mammoth coal vein that you referenced a few minutes ago. So there's. I think it's interesting that you can use. So some of the geography of areas and the local history to actually create a lot of uh, captivating stories.
Exactly. This area where I live, in the 1700s, when settlers first started to come here, it was known as, because it was so wild and rugged, and before coal was discovered, they called it St. Anthony's Wilderness. It was so inhospitable, and so anyway, it's this town of Mammoth that I use. Everyone kind of agrees, the characters, that it's the type of place where almost anything can happen, and it usually does. I had a question for you, Wham. I actually had 2 questions. Where did you get your name, Wham?
Oh,
Probably
that's old.
everybody knows
Yeah.
but me.
Well, that's all right. And what's the other one?
And the other one was, well, I have a near UFO experience I had as a kid.
Uh-huh.
And so I was in my backyard, and I saw this long cylinder
Mm.
in the sky. And I was so shocked because I had just been reading about it maybe a month before. Didn't
Mhm.
make any noise. And I was so shocked I couldn't even yell for somebody else to come out and look at this thing. And as I watched it go, it kind of banked, and I saw two wings, and oh, it's an airplane.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah. Well, I had a similar kind of UFO experience. So a faux UFO experience. To that, I was. I mean, I've seen actually a couple of truly unknown things that did not have wings, and I to this day I don't know what they were, but at a certain, I was maybe about, I don't know what, I was like in my late 20s, I think, maybe early 30s, and I was. My grandparents had a farm in Valley Falls, Kansas, and they sold the farm. They retired and sold the farm. And sometime after my grandfather died, I went back. I had moved away by that time, and I came back to visit, and I snuck onto that farm and discovered that it was a tenant farm, which means that nobody actually lives there, but they do farm it, but there wasn't anybody there at the time. So I just went through the fields, kind of having a moment of nostalgia, you know what I mean? And remembering everything. And it was sunset, and I saw this thing in the sky, and it was coming fast. It seemed to be banking at a very odd angle, and it looked like a silver disc. I mean, I would have sworn it was a silver disc, and it looked kind of close, and it was coming fast. And I can't even explain to you how I panicked, because the one of the unknown experiences or sightings that I had really scared me. I mean, it's like it's probably the most formative memory of my childhood. That's how much it scared me and how unusual it was. So when I saw this disc thing, I freaked out. I mean, I'm not ashamed to say I went into a cold panic, and I just started running as fast as I could towards the farmhouse, even though nobody was there. And it was almost 3/4 of a mile away. I just started running. And at some point, I just turned and looked. And at that point, with the sunset, the angle of the thing had changed. I could see it was a plane. And I can't tell you the relief. I was like, oh my God. I thought I was going to die. I thought my heart was going to fly out of my chest. So I understand entirely,
That's how I was affected.
Yeah, it's And now when you really do see something that's weird, and it remains weird, it does not reveal itself as something that is understood. It is creepy. I mean, you'd think that with all of the stuff around that, we'd be excited to see these things. That's not actually what people experience. It scares the crap out of you, As to Professor Wham, that's kind of a long story. To be very brief about it, Wham is an acronym, and it's an acronym of a much longer Arabic name that I was given by my Sufi teacher. I'm a Sufi, so it's a much longer, name. But I have a friend who many years ago, because the name is in Arabic, and she refused to know how to spell it or pronounce it, she just created the acronym WHAM. And so that's part of where that came from. The other part of it is that when I first started doing this podcast with Jeffrey wanted me to come up with a moniker for myself, some kind of a, do you want a stage name? So Wham had already sort of been created. So I just said, well, take Wham, and I was thinking of it more in the kind of like comic book hero sense of, where you have they're fighting, the heroes are fighting, and you've got the balloons that say wham, pow, bam, that kind of thing. So I was thinking of that. Where the professor came from is completely different. In the late 2010s, I was doing presentations at a local venue here in the Hudson Valley. And I do have a PhD. So some people occasionally will call me professor for a variety of reasons. The guy who ran the venue started calling me Professor Wham. He just started calling me that. And it just kind of stuck over time. So I added it to the Wham, and there you go.
Okay.
So it evolved over time. It's very complicated, but
Wham, with the experience you were just talking about,
which one? You mean the faux UFO?
Yeah. Do you find that when people have a sighting, that there is usually a predictive or predictable response, where these kind of like go into disbelief? I've heard that it feels like there is a need to speak with a priest, minister, some religious figure. Do you find that most people fall into some kind of category like that, or are there a wider varieties of experiences? Because I think some of Dean's characters are, have a lot of disbelief until they end up in a cage.
Well, I've studied UFO narratives in particular for a very long time, probably, over 40 years. And one of the things that I discovered was that when you're talking to people about their experiences, what I always paid attention to was unexpected things. There are several types of people who claim to be witnesses or who are witnesses. Mm-hmm. And after you've listened to a few thousand, literally, of these accounts, you do sort of begin to be able to pick out, and John Keel talks about this, and so does Jacques Vallée. Right. You begin to sort of pick out that certain things resonate as being, I don't know if the word is authentic is the right word, but it's like how I could tell if a person had an experience that really unnerved them. They actually don't want to talk about it at first. They don't want to talk to a priest or an expert, or they don't want to tell anybody, because it's so unnerving to them that they want to try to figure out for themselves first if they can, or they're afraid that somebody's going to consider them insane. It's the people who want to run and tell that I'm just automatically suspicious of. It's not that they didn't have an experience; they might have, but there are types, personality types, that are too eager to tag anything as possibly weird. When I think that. I do believe that there are inexplicable experiences that people have, all that means is that we can't explicate them. We don't know what they are. We don't know what they mean. I've always tended to think that what we call the supernatural is just something we haven't figured out the explanation for yet. There's enough magic in the world without us, being super weird about it. But so those are the kinds of things that always attracted me. When I was doing my abduction research, I did not include in my sample, I did not include anyone who had been hypnotized, because I found that whole hypnosis thing, by the time I was doing the research, I found that there was so much confabulation and suggestion and leading of the subject by the hypnotists, that it was just like, I'm not even going to pay any attention to these people.
Credible.
Because the fact is that the notion that people who have those experiences always forget, that's not true. In fact, in most instances of that kind of amnesia, over time, over 2/3 of them remember most of it spontaneously. Mm-hmm. So it's just, or even more than that probably now. But so, all of that was just ridiculous crap. So I only paid attention to people who had had experiences, and they didn't have to remember all of it. That was fine, because true trauma, true unknown stuff freaks you out, regardless of its source. And you may not remember all of it at once. But I didn't want to deal with the possibility of hypnotic confabulation at all. So I just, and since the type of dissertation I was doing, one of the things that, then this came up actually in the course of the research, one of the things I was doing was comparing abduction accounts and memories in the African American community and contrasting it with similar kinds of experiences in the white community, and then to a lesser degree, say in Hispanic communities. What I found was that the whole trope of missing time and amnesia was almost entirely absent from African American accounts. And if it did exist, it was very transient. And this was true despite the fact that the sort of the archetypal case of the African American abductee was Barney Hill.
Right.
So to me, that was really interesting. It was like, that's interesting. And African American abductees were far less afraid of or didn't see any disjunct in their experiences and previous interests that they may have had, say, in science or science fiction. And they also didn't have a problem with the idea or experience that their abduction experiences often experience them almost as dreams. In other words, that these different states of consciousness and dreams and abduction and visions, they saw a continuum between all of those types of things. They didn't feel like those things had to be very clearly and separately delineated, like I often found in white subjects. So it was interesting. It was like, because that told me a lot about narrative structure, a lot about how people create stories out of experiences and what's important and what isn't. Because for the white percipients, it was very important that they be seen as normal and rational and trying to be scientific. And it wasn't that the African American percipients were not rational or were not interested in science. It was that they were not as afraid of the different ways in which these experiences might, touch different parts of themselves. They didn't have to define everything into little categories. It was just interesting. If other people want to study that stuff and get more, academic about it, that's fine. I just found it was interesting. It was just
the Betty and Barney Hill. I've had Stanton Friedman. I've interviewed him, and that's come up that show. I need to dig that one out, but yeah, he was definitely a good one for that one. Stanton Friedman. Someone was recently talking about him on Facebook, remembering him, and I interviewed him several times, and I know he's got a book about that has some kind of evidence. I don't know if I have it though. I need to buy it. But yeah, it's an interesting case. And then the James Earl Jones movie, I have that on DVD.
Mm-hmm.
I want to watch that again. I forget the name of it. Out of this? No,
it's called Interrupted Journey or something like that.
Yeah.
Or Journey Interrupted or something. Yeah.
That sounds right.
Yeah, I have that. So on a weird, like, I don't even know. It's a weird DVD I bought somewhere, and it's on it.
Dean, what do you have coming up over the summer?
I have a that I'm just I'll probably finish it up next week. I'm kind of editing a book I wrote in the early 2000s, and it's not horror. It's back when I thought I would write the great American novel, and it's about a relationship between a father, a son, and the son's girlfriend. And so there's a lot of comedy, a lot of funny things in that,
Nice.
Especially with all these relationships. And it's called The Summer of Our Discontent, with which is kind of making
Play on Shakespeare.
Yeah, on Richard III. And but anyway, Lamb, have you written any books?
I've written a couple. I'm actually working on a couple too right now. Whenever I have time, I've written a book of short horror stories that are sort of in the Lovecraftian oeuvre, and the reason why I wrote them together is because they came out that way. I'm not really a fiction writer, but I went on a retreat. This was back in 2017. I went on a retreat and had a dream, a very vivid dream out of that retreat. And that dream became one of the stories in the book and sort of the core of the book. And after I wrote down that dream, it's like all the other stories just kind of plopped out. And what was weird about the stories to me is that each one of the stories has a strange set of synchronicities that are attached to them. I wouldn't call them paranormal exactly. They're just odd. You know what I mean? They're the kinds of things where it's like, how did I know this when I don't know this? That kind of stuff. Because I do think that sometimes with creativity, you tune into other stuff. But anyway, so I've got that, and it's called Final Season, Lovecraftian Quartet, and it's under my long Arabic Sufi name, and and then I wrote more recently. It was published in 2019. And I'm doing a volume 2 of this book. That's what I've started working on, kind of an update, and it's called Mysterious Beauty: Living with the Paranormal in the Hudson Valley. So it's kind of a survey book of paranormal experiences and narratives in the Hudson Valley, running all the way down from, the city, all the way up to Albany and a little bit beyond. So, it's available on, as a paperback or as an ebook, or it's on Audible. So however people want it.
Both very good.
What was that? A mysterious what?
It's called Mysterious Beauty: Living with the Paranormal in the Hudson Valley. And I use Dr. C.S. Matthews. That's the author. So if you do just Dr. C.S. Matthews Paranormal like in Amazon, it should come up.
And everybody, Wham's taking a hiatus.
Yes, I am
We
taking a hiatus.
we are very grateful for your service of this weirdness. Thank you. And when you're open to being a guest again, let us know.
Oh, absolutely.
And just
Absolutely.
let us know if you want to do that at any point. And
Yeah. It's
and,
it's mostly to rest and write, to be perfectly honest. You know, I just need time, you know, to do some stuff.
Yeah,
I don't blame you.
I'm there too.
Yeah, Mark's going to help out sometimes, and then Rich Germeau, the native police dude from Bigfoot, he said he would help out. So
Cool.
I just kind of
Cool.
consider it helping out. So and I kind of just mix it up with different people helping out. I kind of like that, mixing it up a little sometimes, like that, weird ways. Just Don Webb co-hosted a few times. Like I think it was there in like October. I have to dig those up. But there was some weird Don Webb co-host that he did a few times. You just throw somebody in there and see what happens. So those are fun.
Yeah, Jeffrey, I'm still waiting for the guy that creates the shadow on the curtain behind you with the horns.
Oh yeah.
To co-host, some come around the corner and co-host.
That's Francis Ford Coppola's Gary Oldman. He's back there. He's watching. But the vampire thing, I don't know if there's any real ones as far as, a 1,000-year-old dude sitting around or whatever. I think there's weird parasitic energy like vampire and psychic like I think there's stuff to that. There's levels to it, There's some people that think they're vampires. I don't really go around saying I am. Christina thinks I'm one, but I don't really go around saying I'm a vampire. But there is something energetically to it. But you have to be careful. You might go cuckoo with that kind of stuff. Like some of those Vampire the Masquerade killer true crime turns into true crime. I used to wear a Nosferatu Vampire the Masquerade shirt in high school. God, that was a cool shirt.
I thought you referred to yourself as the chubby Nosferatu.
Yeah, sometimes I do call myself chubby Nosferatu. but the historical Vlad the Impaler stuff, oh, I love it. There's been a guy on Victor Foya who does these like Vlad the Impaler historical novels. He has like an eye patch and a weird, I'm not gonna say weird, but there is an eye situation. Weird is not. He's a great guy. So, but I don't even remember what happened. But he wears an eye patch with he's from that area. So basically, we had him on one Halloween telling us about historical Vlad the Impaler. And Michelle Desrocher, she's been to Transylvania. We've had her on, and telling us stuff about that. So definitely, I vibe in the energy. But is that what you consider what you do with the energy? There's something to it. There's an energy to it at least, but it's a mystery maybe.
Well, and just to remind all the listeners here, Small Town Monsters just recently released a new Bigfoot movie or film documentary called The Kinderhook Creature in the Shadow of Bigfoot.
Oh, it's up by you.
Yeah, and that's up by me. In fact, I'm going to Kinderhook tomorrow to a Paracon. But what it focuses on, what this particular documentary focuses on, are the experiences of Bruce Hallenbach, whose family in the early 1980s, late 70s, early 80s, became sort of the center of a series of really kind of odd events that focused around his grandmother's farm or his grandmother's land. And it's an interesting documentary because it's done in a very storytelling kind of way, and it follows the kind of organization. Bruce wrote a book about these experiences and sort of follows the organization of the book. It's actually it's only about a little over an hour long, and it's actually a very pleasant, atmospheric kind of telling of these things. It's also got beautiful cinematography, and I'm one of the featured intellectuals in it. So, I'm providing historical context basically for the Hudson Valley. But anyway, it's me and a couple of other people. But it's actually I was actually surprised at how well done it was, and it's been uploaded free on YouTube, so you can watch it.
Sometime, if we can, we should do Bruce and you like in October or something. I would love to get him back about Hammer horror and maybe what we're talking about here or something. That would be really cool. He knows a lot about Hammer horror films.
Well, right. And he actually was, I think he's just been hired to do a really cool, either a cool book or a cool film or something about that. Cool. So I'll see him tomorrow and I'll ask him about it.
Yeah, ask him if he's interested. Something in the fall, because I'm booked up till then. But yeah, that'd be awesome. But yeah, Dean, it's been great. We'll definitely have to get you back. What's your website and stuff? We got we're supposed to be ending like any second. So tell us your website, the best place to get your books.
My website is www.deanallen. That's ALAN Conrad and .com. And and you can get my books through there or on Amazon, or I do as many personal interviews as I can. So
yeah, we'll definitely get you back. It's been great having you on, and I've been recommending to people. And Wham, if you ever get around Prime, that show LOL. There's a show called LOL. There's a show called LOL, Last One Laughing. There's a British version, a Canadian version, Australian. Don't have kids around for the Australian. That shocked me. Even they're so nasty on TV over there. There's a Denmark, a German. But basically what it is, I would start with Britain or Canada. But basically it's comedians from that region. And if you laugh, you get thrown off. And the Canadian one, Tom Green is there. And it's the funniest thing. The British one, they're all good. There's an Ireland one. I haven't watched it yet, but it's really good. I've heard a lot of people talking about it, and it takes a lot to make me laugh. So, but it's called LOL, Last One Laughing. And I swear Tom Green does delicious cheese sandwiches and gets several people kicked off. And then that song becomes his weakness when people sing it to him. So, because he'll start trying to, you can't laugh or smile or you lose. So, whoever's the last person, and they're comedians.
Well, I would be thrown out easy. So,
there's some women on there that'll make you like drop your jaw to the ground. They're hilarious. There's a lot of comedians on there, but we appreciate it so much, Dean and Wham and Mark and everybody. And
I'll see you all around.
Yes, we definitely will. And United Public Radio 107.7 FM New Orleans. And next week with Mark, Samuel Chong and Jay will be here. So UFO stuff. But yeah, vampires and UFOs. Hell yeah. We did it. That's right. I can do it. All right. Good night, everybody. Take care.
Good night.
Good night.